Have you ever been in the presence of a child when they fall? Watch how they look around and see your reaction before they actually cry. And I know they didn't cry because it didn't hurt. They probably wanted to know if it was safe to feel whatever that emotion was. I remember one time I was maybe 8 or 9 years old. I was running around. I think we were going to the river, me and my sister, catching fireflies. I miss those island life. Anyway, I slipped on a wet stone on the riverbed and hit my knee so hard it busted open, blood everywhere. I glanced over looking. I looked straight up where my sister was. She was standing on a mango tree across the river. And her face, oh my gosh, her face said, "You better not cry." She didn't utter a word. But I kind of learned that day that pain doesn't always give you permission to speak. Like, I didn't say a word because her face said, "Don't say nothing," you know? Maybe it was, "How are we going to explain this to mommy?" You know, whatever it was, I knew I couldn't cry. Sometimes I think we hide so that it becomes something else. I can't help but to feel that's where I understood what coping looked like in my early stages of life. Hey y'all, I'm your host Soulful. Welcome to yet another crazy episode of Crazy Questions, where today healing is not quiet and the truth just isn't filtered. So guess what today's crazy question is? What's your coping mechanism? Because we don't start off addicted to substance or maybe get distracted from our real life or even just feel numb, because I think we just tried to survive one quiet moment where nobody saw us hurting. But what about now? Now in our later stages of life, do we cope like it's our second language? Is it just now natural for us to cope however? We overeat, we overthink, we overgive. Oh my gosh, we overshare, and then we underfeel. We do everything not to feel the inner pain. But today I want to flip the script. This episode, I want to talk about why we cope, why I even coped back in my earlier days or even now in my life. Where did it start and what happened when we actually stop using that coping mechanism? What happens then? So again, crazy question. What's your coping mechanism? And for those out there who's like, "Oh, I'm so good at it, I have a therapist," and da-da. I mean, let's just go with, the real one. Not the answer you give your actual therapist when you want to sound balanced. I remember my son saying to me, I think he was 18 or 19 years old during COVID, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm seeing an online therapist." And I'm like, what the hell? Like, is this normal? But that was his coping mechanism. And I'm sorry, I'm being a little facetious because I thought, who talks to someone about their life online? You know, how real is that? But neither here nor there. I'm not knocking it for those who get paid to do that. But I'm talking about that feeling, that thing that you do when life feels too big, too loud, or too unfair. Is it food? Some of you know it's food. Is it sex? Had my moment to that. Weed, religion, or maybe the bottle of Chardonnay that I kind of grew accustomed to. You know what mine was at one point? Silence. Silence with pretending, and I used to walk around smiling like, I'm the queen of calm. And if you're on my WhatsApp, that's always been my, status, calm. Because handling everything, carrying everybody, cooking big meals while quietly starving in my spirit was just a thing that I did. And you know what the worst part was? I didn't even know I was coping. I thought I was being strong. But geez, strength without softness is a total lie. I feel like it's just survival dressed up as success. So let me get into my story time. And this is about me. I know that this might be a story that includes some people, but I don't call no names, but understand it. I remember moving back to my homeland the first time I migrated. And I remember within a few years, I had to bury my child. I had to bury my grandmother. And I stood and helped plan a funeral for my coworker, and he was also my childhood friend. I didn't sit down and grieve. I didn't even collapse in somebody's arms. I didn't scream. You know what I did? I poured a drink. Then I poured another and another. Then I danced barefoot on the beach like my body was the only thing I had left that still actually belonged to me, that stayed with me. I laughed loud. I wore bright red freaking lipstick. I still love my bright red lipstick, I'm not gonna lie. I used to stay late at work, come home, cook quick meals, spend 10 minutes with my children, and then run right back out the door. And yes, I said yes to everything because silence was too heavy and the stillness in my soul was too loud. I worked like peace was the ultimate project. When I tell you I worked, I don't care what it was. I remember going 3 nights straight filming. And when I say it started early in the morning till 5 in the next morning. And I did that for 3-4 days. I drank like closure came in the next bottle and I danced. Boy, I like to dance. But I felt like if I stopped dancing, the grief would have finally caught up with me. That was me coping. Well, that's what they call it. And then I Googled all the meaning of coping while I was working on this. But honestly, what I found out about myself is it was like I was running on fumes with a smile painted in all of my pain. And people used to say, oh my gosh, you're so strong. You're handling everything so well. I used to nod and pretend like nothing was falling apart. I didn't want anybody to see that version of me. I used to sit in the shower until the water went cold. That's a long time. It was a big water heater. I used to pray. And I know sometimes it sounded like I was bargaining with God more than worship. I coped by pretending I had somewhere to be, somewhere more important than my own healing. But here's the truth nobody tells you about coping. It kind of works until it doesn't. So one day I was sitting at my desk, work piling over, nothing is done, emails. I hate having not read emails. Like I have to go through all of them and see what, even if it's spam, like I want to know who sent me. And I didn't do that for so long. My to-do list, because I always wake up and write a whole list of what I'm going to do that day. It was crazy because nothing was checked. And then I just stopped. I couldn't even remember what day it was. I couldn't feel anything. I didn't feel sadness, joy. I just felt empty. And that's when I realized my coping had caged me. Somehow I was trapped in 4 walls and I didn't know how to get out. I had built a life around avoiding pain. But in doing that, I also avoided joy. I avoided stillness. I avoided me. Grief had been knocking and I just kept turning the music loud. So, if you're listening to this and you're in your own season of coping, notice. I ain't here to judge you. All of us survive how we survive. I'm here to remind you, you don't have to stay in survival mode forever. You're allowed to actually put the drink down. You're allowed to stop running. You're allowed to feel the pain and not be swallowed by it. Because eventually your soul will ask for more than just not breaking. Like, it wants to be whole again. And that, my love, is where the real healing begins. So, if today's crazy question didn't catch you off guard, maybe you're coping harder than you think. But hey, no judgment, because I've been there, done that. But just vibes. And be honest with yourself. So before you log off and go back to, pretending you're fine, I'm cool, I'm great, ask yourself this. What part of you have been screaming and you're just calling it peace? All right. And remember, we don't ask these questions. Well, I don't ask these questions to shame anybody. These are questions I actually ask myself, and I've grown from them. So until next time, drink your water, mind your spirit, and please don't let coping turn into you forming a permanent character of your life. This is your host, Soulful. Join me for my next episode of Crazy Questions, where I'm unlearning, I'm relearning, and I have been laughing at myself in this entire process. So I hope it's the same for you. Because you know what? Truth sometimes feels messy. But then freedom comes.